It's great to wake up with a sense of purpose, and it's great when that purpose is to write a piece of commissioned music, and it's even better when it's you who's commissioned the music. Yes, I'm doing a vlog and I'm very, very angry in it, and because I don't take myself too seriously, I need a bit of kind of bleepy bloopy comedy music, and I have just the thing. And it gets even better than that, because I'd also planned a bit of a special. For those of you who subscribe to my social media, particularly Instagram, if you haven't, by the way, you should do, it's got lots of really good porn on it. You would have seen that I bought a Mother 32 by Moog. A bit of a off-the-cuff purchase from Red Dog Music in Edinburgh. Also, in a previous Modular Monday, I mentioned that Moog has retired the Moogafuga range. So I thought I'd invest in a couple of those before the prices spiraled out of this world. So you would have seen there were two mysterious boxes on one of my Instagram. I bought a low-pass filter and I spent an absolute fortune on the analog delay. I have a theory about why the analog delays are so expensive. These Moogafugas really came out when everyone was going into the box, and I remember at the time thinking, well, I don't want a delay pedal because I want it to be able to sync to my host, and I don't want the hassle of MIDIing and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't think many people bought them, and I don't think they made many. So now some of them are getting up to like $5,000 in price. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, I was going to do a Moog special with the DFAM, the Mother 32, two new Moogafugas, and the ones that I already had, the Cluster Flux and the other one. Unfortunately, these Moogafugas don't have the same polarity as other guitar pedals, so I couldn't power them off my Strymon Zoomer. So I had to use the two power blocks that came with the purchase, which was from the United States. Now in the United States, they use a different plug to us here in the UK. So I attached one of those tourist plugs and then realized, no, in the States it's 110 volts and here in the UK it's 240. So you don't use a tourist plug, you need a step downy thingy like this. Of course, it was too late. I'd blown the two power blocks. And herein lies one of the difficulties of waking up very early, and today I got up at 2:30. No shops are open. Doesn't matter, we'll just make a piece of music with the Mother 32, the DFAM, and my nice new SD card recorder. I will be doing a deeper dive into the Mother 32, but basically all I had time for today was to fiddle around, try and program a sequence and synchronize the DFAM to the Mother 32. So insert the SD card and off we go. And I'll show you the results after Sandy, who's had a much more productive weekend than I, shows off his new construction.
Hi Christian, I'm going to jump straight into it with the build video this week. And this week I'm building this, which is the Beasttech Ameba. So I started off by tinning my soldering iron and getting everything out of the packet. Now, this build doesn't have quite as many components as the Hex VCA, but it's a similar sort of construction. You've got two boards. There's a control PCB, which has all of your jacks and knobs and so on, of which on this there are loads. And then there's a sort of a brain, which has your processor and all of your sort of resistors and transistors and so on. So you start off by doing the board, the sort of brain board. And you can see me here, I'm just figuring out which resistors are which. A lot like the instructions for the Hex VCA, this one gives you the colours, a handy list of the colours. Unfortunately, some of these resistors look very alike, so you can see me looking through my instructions here and trying to figure out whether I'm looking at, you know, brown, brown, orange, brown, or brown, brown, red, brown, and so on. So when you're in doubt about these things, I'd always recommend grabbing a voltmeter or an ohmmeter and just measuring the resistance. It's easily done, and it'll save you some heartache if you're a little bit colorblind. So I just ran upstairs and got my voltmeter, and I can just switch that on and measure the resistors. Saves you loads of problems down the line. So once I was satisfied I had the right resistors, I started placing those on the board as well. Like I say, just like the VCA, there are tons of resistors on this, and it's just a case of being methodical and going through them step by step. I generally put all of the resistors of one kind on, solder them all, and then clip the legs off for those. Sometimes if there's only a couple for a particular kind, I might place, you know, 1 or 2 different kinds at once, and then clip the legs off. Just double checking some of those resistors again there. So I'm going to do an in-depth video where I look at the different features of the Beasttech Ameba, but in essence it's a drum sequencer, or designed to be an 8-voice drum sequencer, so it sends out you know, 8 different channels of triggers or pulses, which can be used for triggering your different percussive sounds. Of course, you can use them for just about anything. That's the beauty of modular. The reason it's called the Ameba is that it's based on a cellular automation program. It's a famous program called Conway's Game of Life. I'd recommend you look it up. If anyone out there is a monome user, they'll probably come across it before. But it's a really interesting piece of generative writing, and it's very useful for making kind of cool rhythmic music on a grid. We'll look at more of that in the in-depth video that I'm going to do. But it's a very exciting module, and it'll be quite immediately obvious what it does once you plug it in. So this is sped up by about 1,000% speed. So this build, I sat down for several hours. I actually took a break after the resistors, and I came back after a few hours. All in all, I'd say this build probably took me, on the first day, I probably sat down for a total of about 4.5 hours, just to get this completely done. And then I did a little bit in the morning as well, which we'll come to in a bit. Something you might miss in a sped up video like this is I actually, one of the things I'd recommend doing when you're going to be doing an awful lot of soldering is get yourself some solder tip tinner. It's a little compound that you basically melt on the end of the soldering iron, and it just dissolves away. It's a sort of acidic stuff. It dissolves away the oxidization and helps recoat the tip with some fresh solder. Just keeps things fresh. You'll find when you're doing loads and loads of soldering that the tin on the tip gets very black and oxidized, and then it doesn't melt the solder properly. So that's a really easy solution to that, and it's really cheap. Before I found out about that, I was replacing soldering tips all the time. Unlike the Bafako kit, you can see I keep looking up to a screen. This one didn't come with printed instructions, but it actually has an amazingly useful something like 32-page instructions with pictures of where the things are placed, which can be really handy because on these sorts of kits you're looking for the number on the silk screen, and when you've got something like 65 resistors, it can be quite useful to just look at an image and find it on there. Now you can see me soldering on some headers for the ICs. Now this is my least favourite thing about this kit. I don't know why they didn't just use IC sockets, because it's much easier when you come to align the circuit in the header later on. Actually, that caused me all sorts of grief. So if you are going to build this kit, I'd recommend either you get a IC socket, which I reckon would fit in that place, or you could probably just spend a little bit more time making sure your headers are very straight, or even use the integrated circuit to make sure they fit properly. So I skipped ahead a little bit there. I put on the voltage regulator and the transistors and diodes, and it was very much the same sort of stuff that I was doing before there. This is later on in the evening. I came back and sat back down to do the control board. And I started to run out of memory here, so it might skip ahead a little bit. But essentially it's the same story. You solder on the resistors, you do some diodes, some headers, and you seat the ICs. So at this point, I think this is probably about 2 in the morning. You know, once I got started, I really wanted to just finish this board and get it put together and see if it would work. You can see me here cutting the headers to length and soldering them into place for fitting the ICs. I usually like to do a couple of legs on it first, just to make sure, and then just turn it over and make sure they're straight before quickly soldering the rest. I've actually jumped ahead again a little bit here. I've soldered on the headers, and this should stand as a warning to you against doing any soldering at 2 o'clock in the morning. The headers that connect this board to the rear board are not completely soldered. I missed a few solder joints on there, and so now I'm fitting the 20-something jacks and 7 pots all to the faceplate so that I can get them soldered straight, which is a very time-consuming process. And I got them all soldered, and even put on the knobs after they're soldered there. And then you fit the two boards together with those headers. And this is me in the morning when I realised that it didn't work properly, and I had to take the faceplate back off again, which is a real bear. But it was quite easy to figure out what had gone wrong, because you can actually see here that the female headers on one board have pulled the male headers off of the other. So it was a quick fix. I just had to unscrew all 20 jacks and pull them all off, pull the faceplate off. And you can see I look a bit grouchy about that right there. But it really didn't take too long to fix. It was a little bit tighter to solder these once all of those jacks and pots were on. But like I say, it was about a 5-10 minute job after I got the faceplate off. Just check all of my work before I put it back together. Didn't want to do this all a third time. So before fitting the faceplate again, I just ran upstairs quickly, plugged this into my case to check that it worked, and it did. So then I just put everything back together as per the last page of the instructions, and tightened everything up with some pliers this time because I knew it was going to work. This kit is quite unusual in that it has two different types of pot with different shafts on it, so just be conscious of that when you're putting the pots on. But the nice thing is you've got some colourful pots and some simple ones. And they match up quite nicely with the ones on the Bafako that they're going to sit next to in the case. So this is me just assembling them into my semi-finished case so that I can test them out. That's one of the 2 HP modules that I'll be looking at in future. And here it is. Once it was tested and working, you can see it running there. It's really quite a nice, pretty module to have in the kit, so I really look forward to digging into that one and showing you what it does. But for now, back to you, Christian.
Okay, so let's hit run. Fantastic. And after a bit of fiddling around, is it actually on the SD card? Bingo! So let's put it into the computer and see what comes up. I don't know what that's about, but it looks very flashy. So here we are, the 2 channels. I was actually recording 4 channels inadvertently, and let's have a listen. Complete and utter bollocks. However, I'm not going to get too despondent because I have achieved one very small thing. My first electronic recording without the use of a DAW since 1989. Thanks as always for watching. It's been an incredibly busy week for me actually this week because I've prepared 3 quite big films for the Spitfire Master channel. If you want to check those out, go to spitfireaudio.com and click on the Journal tab on the homepage. If you haven't subscribed here though, please hit subscribe. If you like what, well, Sandy did this week, hit like, and if you want to be notified the next time we put a video up, just hit the little bell icon. See you next week. Bye.